What if I told you that Edgar Cayce, the legendary, sleeping prophet, discovered a breathing technique so powerful that it was deliberately hidden from humanity for over a century? Stay with me, because by the end of this revelation, you'll understand why this knowledge was buried, and more importantly, how you can use it to completely rewire your reality in just 7 minutes. But first, let me share something that will shock you. In 1921, during one of his most famous trance readings, Edgar Cayce revealed something extraordinary. He spoke of an ancient monastery in Tibet where monks had perfected what he called the breath of infinite possibilities. According to Edgar Cayce, this wasn't just meditation, it was direct neural programming of human consciousness. Here's what's disturbing: Edgar Cayce said this knowledge would be suppressed until humanity was ready. And guess what? That time is now. But before I reveal this technique that Edgar Cayce discovered in the Akashic Records, you need to understand something crucial about your breath that will change everything you think you know about manifestation. Right now, as you're listening to this, you're breathing unconsciously. But what Edgar Cayce discovered will make you realize that every unconscious breath you take is actually programming your reality for limitation, scarcity, and survival mode. Don't click away yet, because in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how Edgar Cayce's 111 breath technique can literally rewire your brain's manifestation circuitry in under 7 minutes. Your breath isn't just keeping you alive, according to Edgar Cayce, it's the master key to accessing what he called the universal mind. While modern society has convinced you that changing your life requires years of therapy, endless self-help books, or expensive courses, Edgar Cayce discovered a precise neurological hack that's been hiding in plain sight for millennia. But here's what they don't want you to know. Edgar Cayce said that specific breathing patterns could trigger what modern neuroscience now calls neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to literally rewire itself. But Edgar Cayce knew this over 100 years ago, long before scientists had MRI machines or understood neural networks. And here's the part that will blow your mind: Edgar Cayce discovered that this knowledge was systematically suppressed throughout history. Why? Because a population that understands how to consciously access the universal mind doesn't need external validation, doesn't chase endless consumption, and certainly doesn't remain dependent on systems designed to keep them spiritually asleep. Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal next will completely change how you understand the connection between your breath and your reality. According to Edgar Cayce, when you breathe correctly, you're not just moving air through your lungs. You're creating a direct communication channel between your conscious mind and what he called the divine within. Modern neuroscience has finally caught up to what Edgar Cayce knew decades ago. Here's the fascinating part that Edgar Cayce revealed in his readings: your vagus nerve, the longest cranial nerve in your body, acts like a superhighway between your brain stem and your heart, gut, and lungs. But Edgar Cayce discovered something that scientists are only now understanding: when you manipulate your breath in specific patterns, you're literally sending electrical signals that can switch your nervous system from what he called earthly consciousness to cosmic consciousness. But wait, there's more that Edgar Cayce uncovered that will absolutely astound you. Recent studies using advanced brain imaging have validated what Edgar Cayce predicted: controlled breathing techniques increase gamma wave activity in the brain by up to 700%. These gamma waves, operating at 30 to 100 Hz, are the exact frequencies Edgar Cayce associated with accessing the Akashic Records, the universal database of all knowledge and possibilities. Edgar Cayce said these gamma waves create what he called binding consciousness, the moment when scattered thoughts suddenly synchronize and create new realities. Modern neuroscientists now call this exact phenomenon neural binding. But the 111 technique that Edgar Cayce discovered goes even deeper than this. According to Edgar Cayce, this breathing pattern targets something he called the soul's filtering mechanism, what modern science now knows as the reticular activating system. Edgar Cayce said most people's perception filter is programmed by fear and past life karma. This breathing pattern doesn't just relax you, Edgar Cayce discovered it literally hacks your perception filter and opens what he called the doorways to infinite intelligence. Stop everything you're doing right now. Take 3 normal breaths and really pay attention to them. Feel that shallow, unconscious breathing pattern you just experienced. Edgar Cayce said that exact breathing pattern is what keeps you trapped in what he called the illusion of separation. You've been breathing survival consciousness instead of universal consciousness. You've been oxygenating limitation instead of infinite possibilities. Now here's where it gets absolutely mind-blowing. Edgar Cayce discovered that the 111 breath technique was originally revealed to those Tibetan monks through divine revelation. According to Edgar Cayce, the number 111 wasn't chosen randomly, it represents what he called the Trinity of creation operating through human consciousness. But Edgar Cayce said there was something even more profound hidden within this technique that wouldn't be understood until humanity developed advanced brain monitoring technology. And now, thanks to researchers like Dr. Andrew Huberman, we finally understand the scientific precision behind Edgar Cayce's spiritual revelations. Here's what Edgar Cayce discovered about your brain that will change everything. According to Edgar Cayce, your brain has 3 distinct processing centers that, when synchronized through specific breathing, create what he called at-one-ment with universal consciousness. Edgar Cayce wasn't using mystical language, he was describing what modern neuroscience now calls quantum coherent brain states. Edgar Cayce said when your emotional brain, thinking brain, and intuitive brain enter synchronized states, your consciousness literally becomes what he called receiving station for divine guidance. Modern scientists now know this as cross-frequency coupling between different brain regions. The number 111, according to Edgar Cayce, triggers what he called the sacred sequence, the optimal breath count that aligns human consciousness with cosmic consciousness. In this state, Edgar Cayce said your thoughts aren't just electrical impulses, they become what he called creative forces that directly shape physical reality. But here's the part Edgar Cayce considered most sacred, and why I need you to pay close attention to every word I'm about to say. The technique itself appears simple, but Edgar Cayce emphasized that the precision is everything. He said even a slight deviation from the exact sequence would prevent access to what he called the silence, that sacred space where miracles are born. Here's exactly what Edgar Cayce discovered during his deepest trance states. Phase 1, the activation sequence. Edgar Cayce said to inhale for a count of 4, while imagining divine light entering through the crown of your head and flowing down your spine. According to Edgar Cayce, this isn't just visualization, you're literally activating what he called the spiritual centers along your spine, which modern science now knows increases norepinephrine production and activates your sympathetic nervous system. Hold for 4 counts while focusing on what Edgar Cayce called the single eye, the space between your eyebrows. Edgar Cayce discovered this activates your pineal gland, which modern science now knows produces DMT and melatonin, the exact neurochemicals Edgar Cayce associated with expanded consciousness and access to higher dimensions. Phase 2, the integration. Edgar Cayce said to exhale for 8 counts, longer than the inhale, which he discovered triggers what modern science calls your parasympathetic nervous system. According to Edgar Cayce, this floods your brain with what he called the peace that passeth understanding, what we now know as GABA, the neurotransmitter that creates the relaxed but alert state Edgar Cayce said was necessary for divine communion. But here's the crucial part Edgar Cayce emphasized, during this exhale, you're not just releasing air. According to Edgar Cayce, you're releasing what he called karmic patterns and creating space for what he termed soul purposes to manifest. Phase 3, the quantum pause. This is what Edgar Cayce considered the most sacred part of the technique. Edgar Cayce said to hold empty for 2 counts, and this pause between breaths is where he discovered the real magic happens. According to Edgar Cayce, in this space of no breath, your brain waves shift into what he called the silence where God speaks. Modern neuroscience now knows this as theta frequency states, the same brain waves active during deep meditation, lucid dreaming, and what Edgar Cayce called soul travel. Edgar Cayce said this is when your personality mind steps aside and your soul becomes what he called impressionable to divine will. Now here's the part that will absolutely astound you. Edgar Cayce said to repeat this exact sequence 111 times. No more, no less. According to Edgar Cayce, the 111th breath is when something extraordinary happens spiritually. What he called the veil between worlds temporarily lifts, and your soul gains direct access to what he termed the mind of the maker. But Edgar Cayce discovered something even more profound that modern science has only recently validated. According to Edgar Cayce, the 111 breath technique doesn't just change your consciousness, it changes what he called the body's vibratory pattern at the cellular level. Researchers at Harvard Medical School have now discovered that specific breathing practices can activate genes associated with enhanced cognitive function, stress resilience, and cellular regeneration within minutes, exactly what Edgar Cayce predicted over a century ago. Dr. Sarah Lazar's groundbreaking MRI research revealed that participants practicing similar breathing techniques showed measurable increases in brain tissue thickness within just 8 weeks. But Edgar Cayce said the 111 technique accelerates this process exponentially because it works directly with what he called life force energy. According to Edgar Cayce, your breath isn't just moving air, it's moving what he called prana, the universal life force. Edgar Cayce said every inhale downloads new possibilities from what he termed the universal storehouse, and every exhale releases what he called crystallized thought patterns that no longer serve your soul's evolution. And that pause between breaths? Edgar Cayce said that's where miracles live, in the sacred space between what was and what could be. But here's something else Edgar Cayce revealed that challenges everything mainstream spirituality teaches about manifestation. Edgar Cayce discovered that the universe responds to what he called soul coherence, not just mental intention. According to Edgar Cayce, you can visualize and affirm all day, but if your soul is carrying unresolved patterns from past lives, you're broadcasting what he called mixed vibrations into the universal mind. Think about this for a moment. You've probably experienced this yourself. You set an intention, you visualize your goal, maybe you even create vision boards, but weeks pass, months pass, and nothing shifts in your reality. Here's why, according to Edgar Cayce, your conscious mind was asking for one thing while your soul was vibrating at the frequency of what he called karmic debts and soul lessons that needed to be cleared first. Edgar Cayce said the 111 breath technique creates what he called soul alignment, a state where your personality desires, soul purposes, and divine will harmonize at the same frequency. In this state, according to Edgar Cayce, you don't just think about what you want, you become what he called a magnet for divine supply. But here's what's even more mind-blowing about Edgar Cayce's discovery. Edgar Cayce understood something about what we now call quantum mechanics decades before it was officially discovered. According to Edgar Cayce, consciousness doesn't just observe reality, it actively participates in creating it. Edgar Cayce called this mind being the builder. When you achieve what Edgar Cayce called soul alignment through the 111 breath technique, you're not just observing reality, you're what Edgar Cayce termed co-creating with divine intelligence. Your focused attention synchronized with your breath creates what modern physicists call quantum coherence in your brain's microtubules. Edgar Cayce predicted that future science would develop devices to measure these states, and now we have them. Heart rate variability monitors can now detect what Edgar Cayce called soul coherence, but Edgar Cayce discovered how to create and maintain these states purely through breathwork over a century ago. Recent research at the Institute of Noetic Sciences has validated what Edgar Cayce always claimed: individuals in coherent states can influence random events, affect living systems, and even impact healing at a distance. Edgar Cayce said this isn't supernatural, this is what happens when human souls operate at what he called their divine frequency. But here's where I need you to really pay attention, because what I'm about to share could change your life forever. Edgar Cayce said the 111 breath technique is most powerful when practiced with what he called soul dedication. According to Edgar Cayce, you must approach this technique not as a way to get what your personality wants, but as a way to align with what your soul came here to accomplish. Practice the 111 breath technique every morning for the next 7 days, but do it the Edgar Cayce way. Before you begin, Edgar Cayce said to set an intention like this: Divine Intelligence, use this technique to align my will with thy will, and manifest through me what serves the highest good of all. Edgar Cayce emphasized the importance of what he called soul documentation. Keep a detailed journal of everything that shifts. Your dreams, synchronicities, unexpected opportunities, changes in perception, and what Edgar Cayce called divine appointments, meaningful encounters that seem orchestrated by higher intelligence. Edgar Cayce said manifestation through this technique isn't always dramatic. According to Edgar Cayce, sometimes the most profound transformations come through what he called gentle leading, subtle shifts that redirect your entire life path. But here's what Edgar Cayce considered the most important part of this teaching. Edgar Cayce said once you begin practicing the 111 breath technique consistently, you'll start experiencing what he called confirmations, undeniable signs that you're aligning with your soul's true purpose. These might come as sudden insights, doors opening unexpectedly, or what Edgar Cayce called the right people appearing at the right time. Edgar Cayce warned that as you begin operating from soul coherence instead of personality consciousness, some people in your life might resist the changes they see in you. According to Edgar Cayce, this is natural because your raised vibration will either inspire others to grow or make them uncomfortable with their own stagnation. The question Edgar Cayce would ask isn't whether this technique works. According to Edgar Cayce, it's a universal law that consciousness aligned with divine will must manifest results. The real question Edgar Cayce would pose is, are you ready to discover what becomes possible when you stop living from personality desires and start breathing from soul purpose? But there's something else about the 111th breath that Edgar Cayce revealed in his most sacred readings, something he said should only be shared with those who demonstrate they're truly ready to serve as instruments of divine will. Edgar Cayce said that on the 111th breath, something he called the Christ consciousness awakens within the practitioner. According to Edgar Cayce, this isn't a religious experience, it's the activation of what he called the divine potential that lies dormant in every human soul. Edgar Cayce said when this activation occurs, you don't just manifest for yourself anymore, you become what he called a channel for divine healing in the world. Your very presence begins to uplift others, your words carry what Edgar Cayce called soul authority, and your actions become guided by what he termed divine wisdom. This is why Edgar Cayce said this technique was hidden for so long. According to Edgar Cayce, humanity wasn't ready for a population of individuals operating from activated Christ consciousness. But Edgar Cayce also said there would come a time when this knowledge would be essential for humanity's spiritual evolution. Edgar Cayce predicted that time is now. Throughout history, humanity has reached turning points, moments when individuals and civilizations must choose whether to remain bound by fear, limitation, and separation, or to rise into a new level of consciousness. According to the teachings of Edgar Cayce, we are now living in such a pivotal era. He called it the time of choosing. It is a time when every soul is being invited to decide whether to continue operating from old patterns of fear and survival, or to awaken to what he described as our divine inheritance, a state of living in alignment with love, unity, and higher purpose. This period of transition is not about small changes in personal lifestyle or external circumstances. It is about transformation at the deepest level of being. Cayce emphasized that the decisions we make now, individually and collectively, will shape the course of humanity's future. Will we continue to live from fear, competition, and division, or will we step into the consciousness of love, cooperation, and service? This is the essence of the time of choosing. In his work, Cayce revealed many methods for preparing oneself to live from divine consciousness, but among them he pointed to a practice he described as especially significant, the 111 breath technique. On the surface, it may appear to be a breathing exercise, but Cayce emphasized that it is far more than that. He taught that this practice is a sacred tool for aligning body, mind, and spirit, and for preparing the soul to participate in what he foresaw as the coming spiritual renaissance on earth. The 111 breath technique is not merely a method for relaxation or personal manifestation, though it can bring both peace and clarity. Its deeper purpose is to help awaken the soul's memory of its true nature. Each cycle of breath becomes a doorway, guiding the practitioner beyond fear and limitation into direct communion with the divine presence that lives within. By practicing this technique, Cayce explained, we are not only strengthening our personal connection to spirit, but also attuning ourselves to serve as instruments in a greater unfolding plan. Cayce described those who dedicate themselves to this work as way-showers. A way-shower is someone who demonstrates through the quality of their presence that it is possible for human beings to live from divine consciousness while still embodied in the physical world. Way-showers do not need to preach, persuade, or convince. Their very existence becomes a testimony to the power of love, the reality of the divine, and the possibility of transformation. By learning to breathe in harmony with the rhythm of creation, they become channels of healing, inspiration, and hope for others. This is why Cayce urged his students to take such practices seriously. He often reminded them that the era of spiritual play had ended. The time for casual interest or half-hearted exploration is over. Those who feel the inner call to awakening must now step into what he referred to as spiritual maturity. This means taking full responsibility for one's thoughts, actions, and spiritual development. It means becoming willing to live each day as a conscious co-creator with the divine, seeking always to serve the highest good of all. When viewed in this light, the 111 breath technique is not just about learning to breathe differently. It is about learning to exist differently. Each breath becomes a sacred act, a reminder that we are not merely physical beings struggling to survive, but eternal souls choosing how to express divine consciousness through human form. Each inhalation invites us to receive the light of spirit. Each exhalation becomes an offering of love, peace, and blessing to the world. In this way, the practice gradually reshapes not only the inner life of the practitioner, but also the field of energy around them, influencing families, communities, and ultimately the destiny of humanity. Cayce also spoke of what he called the soul's pre-birth covenant with the divine. Before incarnation, each soul agrees to contribute something unique to the evolution of consciousness on Earth. This covenant is not about achieving fame, power, or recognition, but about fulfilling a sacred promise to live in alignment with love and truth. The 111 breath technique, he taught, is one of the ways souls can awaken the memory of that covenant and begin to live it out with clarity and purpose. As you approach this practice, remember that it is more than a technique. It is a doorway into your highest destiny. It is a way of preparing yourself not only for personal awakening, but for participation in the greater spiritual renaissance that is already beginning to dawn upon the earth. The choice before you is the same choice that faces all of humanity, to remain bound by fear and separation, or to rise into the light of divine consciousness. So ask yourself, are you ready to answer that call? Are you prepared to take your place as a way-shower, one who embodies the possibility of living as a divine being in human form? If so, then begin. With each breath, align yourself more fully with the truth of who you are. With each breath, release the patterns of fear and limitation. With each breath, step more fully into your divine inheritance. This is the invitation of the 111 breath. This is the promise of the time of choosing. And this is the path that leads not only to your own awakening, but to the renewal of humanity itself. Thank you so much for staying with me through this exploration. If you found value in today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who might benefit from it. And if you'd like to go a step further in supporting this work, you can now leave a super thanks below. It's a small way to say thank you, and it truly helps keep this channel going.